destroy my world! Alright, what's going on, guys? Today we have another Bleach Mirrors High video for you today. And today I wanted to talk about this tweet here from Bleach Mirrors High France. And basically, he quote tweeted this post that's no longer available. It got removed. Basically, there was somebody in a community that was saying, like, you know, PvP, there is this thing where they were claiming that PvP had this like system where you were a low level, aka like if you were free to play, you basically were at a massive disadvantage due to some buffs and debuffs in PvP. I can't really show you the post because it literally got removed, so I can't really like come in here and like see, like it just doesn't exist. But basically, Bleach Mirrors High France came out and kind of corrected this individual and basically said that this is not correct. Like, and so here we will go ahead and read what it says here. It says buffs and debuffs only apply in PvE and only when the player has the advantage. You can test it on your end with story mode fight. For example, a hollow will be stronger than you without benefiting from any buffs and without the player being penalized. So, and it says here for PvP, which isn't PvP because you can literally skip the animations and the opponents are controlled by the computer, which is going to be the main focus of today's video, but let's continue on. The opponents are always weaker than you because the game adapts to your team regardless of your spiritual pressure or spiritual power. So this is for the PvP section only, right? Where it adapts to your team, like your team's power. I won a game with an Ichigo level 28 and 2 level 1 characters because the game adapted with just one character around 2600 BP. Battle points on the other side. Yes, this game isn't perfect, that's clear. We're not going to defend certain points that are indefensible, but you shouldn't criticize blindly and foolishly. So basically, again, there was someone on Twitter, probably doesn't even play the game, you know, and was basically claiming that PvP had this weird buff system depending on your, you know, depending on what level character you are, and if you weren't as high, if you didn't have enough points or as much points as the opponent, then you would be at a massive disadvantage because you'll be laid out with debuffs, something around that, somewhere around those lines. And basically, this is basically clearing out any of those misconceptions and confusion around PvP and PvE. They were probably confusing them with what was happening with PvE. So basically in PvE, you'll be able to, you know, like most gacha games, there's going to be missions where certain characters are going to be much stronger in those missions compared to others, right? There's a lot of games that do, pretty much every gacha game does this. I don't really know any gacha game that doesn't do this, where there are certain events, certain missions where you are at advantage when you bring certain typings of characters in an event, and if you don't bring them, then it's going to be much more difficult. Like, that's just how it is. But that's just a certain section of today's video. Today I wanted to basically talk to you about, in this video, about PvP and the fact that PvP quite literally is not PvP. It's still PvE, player versus environment. So, as of right now, player versus player is not actually player versus player. Instead, it's actually fighting against bots. You're fighting against bots. You're not fighting against real people. Now, here's the deal. I'm gonna say this right off the gate. This is a closed beta. I do not know for certain, but there is a good chance that when the game comes out, that PvP will actually be a genuine player versus player game mode. However, with that being said, it could be due to the fact that there was only up to like 20,000 players that got invited. I mean, I don't know, maybe half of those players are actually playing the game, right? I don't think PvP would have actually worked that well. You'd probably be in queue forever, but you know, regardless, it's only against bots. It's only against bots. I don't know exactly how any of that even works, to be exact, because quite honestly, like, it's just kind of weird. PvP, but against bots, right? I know Bleach Brave Souls technically is PvP, but you're not fighting against other people. It's just bots fighting on both ends, right? And whichever bot is better wins. That's kind of how Bleach Brave Souls works. Bleach Soul Resonance doesn't have PvP. And, you know, it's just really interesting. Because one of my main concerns about this game was going to be the fact that if this game is like Dragon Ball Legends and it's PvP based, like actual genuine PvP, because Dragon Ball Legends is actual PvP, as the game progresses, the game is going to become much more difficult to, you know, maintain yourself in the current meta, which basically means if you don't have the character that is currently out at the time, and if you don't have the most broken team because you didn't summon or you didn't get lucky or you're missing a character on a team, you're going to be left behind and you're going to be at a massive disadvantage, because there's no gacha game that has player versus player that is fair, right? There's probably been some, you know, there's probably been some games where they try to make it fair, but it's just like, at the end of the day, it's a gacha game. If whoever has the most dupes on a character is going to win. That's just how it works, right? You have characters like The Truth, DT. He doesn't play Legends, but when he used to play Legends, he can just buy every character, max them out, and then be at the top 1% of player versus player in PvP, because he wailed out, bro. You know, so that was my main issue with Dragon Ball Legends, and why I eventually just stopped playing the game, because I just couldn't keep up. I spent quite a bit of money on the game. I loved the gameplay. Gameplay was phenomenal. Animation's phenomenal. The gacha was not so phenomenal. And PvP, of course, wasn't all that fair, because at the end of the day, it's a gacha game. So whoever spends the most money wins, no matter what. This game, that was my main concern. Now it seems like it's going to be against bots. I don't know exactly to what degree the bots, like how much the difficult. I'm guessing like the higher rank you go, the more difficult the bots become. In a way, it kind of solves all the problems, right? Because then it's like, oh, you don't have to worry about having the most meta characters. PvP just eventually becomes... PvP is just essentially it's just a name for an event. PvP is essentially just endgame. It's just PvE endgame. Like, that's all it is. It's not player versus player. You're just doing Spiral Abyss, right? You're just doing Hazard Towers, right? You're just doing it's one of those, like, every gacha game has an end game, right? And I'm guessing PvP, like, the higher you go, the stronger the enemy is going to get, and it's probably going to be the most difficult thing you're going to have to fight, right? Because this leads me to another question, right? Is this game going to be PvP, player versus player focused, or not? Right? Is this game going to be a Bleach Soul Resonance, but it just has player versus player, right? But not really. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, what is the main focus for this game? It has player versus player, but it's only against bots, so it's not really PvP. where is the main focal point for this game? Is it going to be focusing on its story, its character events, PvE? Is it going to come out with PvP, right? Which I genuinely don't believe the game will have actual player versus player, because it says right here, you can literally skip the animations. You can literally skip the animations. That's a feature that you can do in player versus player. If this bot thing, like if this PvP controlled by bots thing event was just a placeholder strictly for the closed beta, it wouldn't have this feature pre-installed. You know what I'm saying? Like the fact that you can skip animations in PvP, that being a feature automatically tells me that the game is not going to have genuine PvP, because that tells me that the developers and Bandai are committed to having a game that has player versus player. It's not player versus player, but you know what I'm saying, right? They're committed to a game mode where they're calling it PvP, but it's against bots. And they added a feature in which you can skip the animations. That just tells me that they're not focusing, or that their mindset is not on an actual player versus player, right? You know what I'm saying? Like them having features like skipping animations and stuff like that, if it was just a placeholder, it would just be like, oh, we're just going up against bots and that's it, but you can't skip animations. Everything else seems real, right? Like the rank up system seems real. The fact that this as well, the fact that your characters adapts based on your battle points, right? The fact that you can just bring in a level 28 and 2 level 1 characters, and the game just says, okay, well, here's your average battle points. We're gonna match you up with a bot that has also somewhere similar battle points as well. These are two big features, like skipping animations and being the game adapting to one character's like battle points. Those are two big features that tells me that Bandai is committed to essentially go through this player versus bot, right? This is not player versus player, this is player versus bot, right? They're committed to not having actual PvP. There are some pros and cons to it. The biggest pro is that you don't have to worry about whaling in the game. You don't have to worry about whaling. You can just grab a character, I'm gonna play PvP, and then it's like, it's not even leveled up. It doesn't matter, because it's just the game just adapts to your points anyway, so who cares, right? That sort of stuff. And then the con is like, well, the replay value just went down the tank, right? The replayability of this game just went down the sinker, because PvP is a game mode in which you can just play for hours. You can just Dragon Ball Legends, if you whale in the game, or if you play the game a lot, you're gonna be on the game for a good while because it's PvP based. But this game not actually having PvP, like genuine player versus player, is going to dramatically reduce the replayability of this game, unless they go full hands on deck and they either make a separate PvP game mode where it's actual, where you actually fight against people, or they go the Bleach Soul Resonance route, where they just straight up pump the game with a crap ton of events, with a crap ton of endgame, with a crap ton of story, and then this and that, to the point where you're just overwhelmed with a lot of PvE events, to the point where you can't complain about there not being anything to do. Where you can't complain that there's no content. PvP is content, but it's not actually PvP. We're not getting PvP in the game unless they, you know, by the time the game comes out, they're like, hey, we heard your feedback. The game no longer has bots. It's actual player versus player, right? But I don't know. I mean, in one hand, I'm kind of glad, because that means I don't whale. All right, I'm not a whale, and it's gonna be, if it did have player versus player, it would have been genuinely frustrating for someone like me to play the game going up against people who spends tons of money in a game, right? But at the same time, it not actually having player versus player reduces the replayability of the game significantly, and that's a big deal. So you got your pros and cons. I feel like they could probably have this where, you know, this whole like character adaptation, whatever, based on your battle points. I feel like they could do that without, hell, they could probably even do skip. They can probably still have animation skips even with actual player versus player. I feel like that wouldn't be such a crazy thing to do, right? I feel like they can still have these features and still have a genuine PvP game mode, right? Or am I crazy? But anyways, I've been yapping for a while now. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Make sure you leave a like, comment, subscribe. I don't know. I mean, it's good for me because I don't really have to spend that much money on the game, but it's also like the replay value just went down super significantly. So, I mean, yeah, guys, that's going to be it for today's video. Make sure you leave a like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.